The ocean didn't roar here, it whispered. Low tide rolled in slow and steady against the edge of Charleston Harbor, brushing the stone seawall with the softness of memory. Cole Whitaker stood at the window of his penthouse, 35 stories above a city that worshipped history but rarely forgave it. He held a glass of untouched bourbon, the ice long melted, the drink only a prop. His eyes weren't on the water. They were on his own reflection in the glass. Tall, pressed, impeccable. Every detail about him spoke of precision. Dark suit, Windsor knot, cufflinks engraved with his father's initials. But in the window, his reflection looked tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep could fix. The kind that came from silence, repetition, from waking up every morning in a place built for success and realizing he hadn't laughed, truly laughed, in months. Behind him, the penthouse was cathedral quiet. No music, no staff. No one waiting in the next room to touch his arm and ask about his day. The floors gleamed. The furniture, Italian and rare, belonged more in a design museum than a home. He owned 6 properties like this across the world: Paris, Tokyo, Sydney, Aspen, Manhattan, and in every one of them, the lighting was programmable and the conversation non-existent. His phone buzzed on the countertop. He didn't move. It was likely about the Charleston Heritage Hotel renovation, the crown jewel of his southern expansion, a long-abandoned boarding house on East Bay Street he'd bought out of nostalgia more than strategy, or maybe guilt. His mother had grown up 3 blocks from there, raised in humidity and hardship before marrying his father and trading porch swings for penthouses. He didn't answer the call. The project wasn't what kept him up at night. The quiet did. Cole set down the glass and adjusted his cufflinks. Time to move. Time to perform. He stepped into the private elevator and scanned his watch, broken, but he wore it anyway, his father's. The second hand stuck at 4:11. A subtle reminder, even the best crafted things stop working eventually. When the elevator opened in the underground garage, his driver was already waiting, door open, eyes forward, no words, just routine. As the car slid through Charleston's narrow streets, Cole looked out at the world moving on a different rhythm. Cyclists balancing coffee and tote bags, mothers with strollers, couples arguing, then laughing as they turned corners. He envied them in a way he would never say out loud. Their chaos, their unpredictability, their warmth. By the time they pulled up to the heritage property, the sun had settled behind a bank of clouds, leaving the building cast in a warm, amber gloom, weathered brick, shuttered windows. A wide wraparound porch that sagged a little at the edges, like it was tired of waiting for someone to bring it back to life. A small team was gathered at the gate: architects, surveyors, PR handlers with tight smiles. He recognized none of them. Temporary hires, professionals who'd speak eloquently about legacy and preservation, but wouldn't remember this project 2 months after it launched. Except one. She stood apart from the rest, near the stone steps. No clipboard, no blazer, just dark jeans, a white linen shirt, and an expression like she'd already made her judgments. Auburn hair tied up in a loose bun, with a pencil tucked behind one ear. She didn't flinch when he approached. "You're May Ellington," he said, without offering his hand. "You're late," she replied, glancing at her watch. Hers worked. The group chuckled nervously, unsure whether to be amused or horrified. Cole didn't smile. "I own the building." May looked up at it. "Then I suppose we'll both need to care about what it becomes." There was a pause, thick enough to slice. He wasn't used to being challenged, least of all by someone whose credentials he hadn't vetted personally. But something in her tone intrigued him. It wasn't disrespectful. It was anchored, real. "Walk me through it," he said, dismissing the rest with a wave. May led him up the creaking steps and through the heavy front doors, which opened with a groan that sounded more like a memory than a protest. Inside, Dust danced in the sunlight. The floorboards beneath their feet whispered secrets. This was a home for unwed mothers in the 1940s, May began, voice calm and steady. Later, a boarding house, then a private school. Every wall has seen 100 versions of love and loss. I'm not here to erase that. Cole arched a brow. You're here to make it profitable. May turned to him. I'm here to make it matter. Profit is your language. Space is mine. It hit him harder than it should have. Her words weren't sharp, just honest. He wasn't used to honesty. They moved through the parlor, the old dining hall, the back garden overtaken by wisteria vines. May described her vision. Sunlight filtering through original window frames, reclaimed wood for floors, handmade quilts displayed in guest rooms. Not luxury for the sake of status, but comfort that whispered, you were welcome. You want people to feel like they belong here, Cole said, more observation than question. I want people to exhale when they walk through the door, she replied. He paused by a crumbling fireplace, ran his hand across the charred brick. For a second, he remembered the scent of ash and cinnamon, his grandmother's house, Christmas morning, before the world had expectations. A gust of wind rattled the back door. May turned to him again, this time quieter. This place is asking for restoration, not reinvention. Their eyes held for a moment longer than necessary. You're hired, he said. I already was, she answered. This time he smiled, barely, but it was something. As he stepped back outside, the wind picked up, carrying the smell of salt and gardenia. He stood at the top of the porch steps, staring out at the city he'd left behind and returned to with more money than most men would ever see. And none of the peace they promised it would bring. Behind him, May spoke softly to one of the contractors about load-bearing walls and natural light. Her voice didn't rise or perform. It carried like a melody that belonged here. He looked down at his watch. 4:11. Still broken. But for the first time in years, Cole Whitaker wondered what it would take to fix it. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought mattered to me either way. May Ellington's fingers grazed the edge of the rolled blueprints as she stepped into the office space they'd temporarily set up on the second floor of the restoration site. Morning light spilled in through the tall windows, touching everything with that golden Charleston hue, rich, slow, like molasses warmed on a stove. Dust motes spun in the beams like dancers. She loved this kind of quiet. Not the kind that felt empty, the kind that waited. A soft creak on the stairwell made her turn. Cole appeared in the doorway, tailored as always. Navy slacks, white shirt, no tie. Casual for him, but still buttoned to the top. His sleeves were rolled neatly to his forearms, as if spontaneity had rules. He didn't speak right away, just looked around the room like he wasn't used to stepping into a space that hadn't been curated. May arched an eyebrow. You don't strike me as a man who shows up before 8 a.m. He stepped inside. I don't usually make exceptions, she smirked, smoothing the blueprint across the table. Lucky me. He said nothing, but his gaze lingered a beat too long. May pointed to the sketch. I've reworked the entryway layout. If we open up this wall and expose the original beams, we get more light and better flow. Plus, it honors the original structure. He leaned over her shoulder to look. She stilled. He was close, too close, and smelled faintly of cedar and something clean, understated. He didn't touch her. He didn't need to. The space between them charged with something she hadn't expected to feel this early in the day, or ever, with him. You think people care about original beams? He asked quietly. May didn't look at him. I think people care about honesty, even in buildings. He pulled back, just a fraction, but enough to let her breathe again. I wasn't expecting this much passion, he said. About wood? She asked. About anything. May met his eyes. They weren't cold, exactly, but they were cautious, like he'd learned the hard way not to want too much. Before she could speak, a knock rattled the doorway. Eleanor Whitaker, tall, dark blazer over scrubs, efficient to the bone. Her ponytail didn't have a single strand out of place. "Sorry to interrupt," Eleanor said, stepping in without waiting for permission. "Cole, I need a word, privately." Cole's jaw tensed. "It can wait." Eleanor's glance shifted briefly to May, then back to her brother. "I'd rather it didn't." May gathered her plans. "I can step out." "No," Eleanor said. "Actually, stay. Might as well get ahead of things." May paused, half-folded paper in her hands. Cole's voice dropped an octave. "Eleanor." But Eleanor was already walking toward the window, arms crossed. "You're emotionally involved in this project. That's not a problem, yet. But I see the signs." May blinked. "Excuse me?" "You're talented," Eleanor said, turning to her. "But my brother has a habit of confusing admiration for attachment, and he doesn't handle entanglements well." "Eleanor," Cole snapped. She didn't flinch. "I'm not being cruel. I'm being clear." May slowly laid the blueprint back on the table. "If you have concerns about the project's integrity, I'm happy to address them. But if this is about personal assumptions, it's about legacy," Eleanor cut in. "This building will carry our family name. My mother was born 3 blocks from here. I watched this place decay for 20 years while Cole chased luxury high-rises across the world. Now he's back, and he wants to make it meaningful. That's good. But don't become the reason he walks away when it gets too real." May's jaw tightened. "I don't need warnings, and I'm not afraid of real." The room stilled. Then Cole stepped forward, voice firm. "That's enough." Eleanor hesitated, then softened, just slightly. "I'm your sister. I've seen you burn out and shut down. I won't watch it again." She turned to May. "You're stronger than most. I hope that's enough." She left without another word. May exhaled. Cole rubbed a hand across the back of his neck. "She's direct, always has been." "Direct doesn't bother me," May said. "But I don't like being handled." "You weren't." She looked at him. "Then what was that?" He walked to the window Eleanor had stood beside and stared out. "She's protective," he said. "After our parents died, she made it her job to monitor my life. It's how she grieves. Still." May crossed her arms. "And you? How do you grieve?" Cole didn't answer right away. The silence pressed. "I build," he finally said. "I build things to keep the silence full." It wasn't the answer she expected, but it was honest, and something in it bent the edge of her frustration. "Then maybe this project isn't just about legacy," she said. "Maybe it's about permission." He turned. "Permission for what? To want more than walls." Their eyes met. This time, neither of them looked away. The next few hours passed in a blur of measurements, notes, site walkthroughs, and discussion. May kept it professional, but the air between them didn't return to neutral. Every glance, every pause carried an undercurrent. By late afternoon, they stood in what used to be the garden courtyard. Overgrown now, but you could still see the bones, flagstone paths, the suggestion of an arbor, faded hydrangea bushes that refused to die. "This could be the heart of the hotel," May said. "Imagine an open-air breakfast space, morning light, fragrant blooms, maybe a fountain." Cole looked around, thoughtful. "My mother loved gardens," he said softly. "She used to press wildflowers into books." May smiled. "We can build something she would have loved." He glanced at her, then down at the soil. "Funny how the most important parts of a building aren't the ones that hold it up." May stepped closer. "They're the parts that hold us up." A pause. Then, "You have dinner plans?" he asked, almost too casually. She tilted her head. "Is that a question or a test?" "Dinner," he repeated with half a smile. "As in food?" Conversation. Maybe a few answers. May considered it. "I'll meet you," she said, "but I choose the place." "Of course you do." They stood there in the fading light, surrounded by a garden begging to bloom again. The silence wasn't uncomfortable this time. It held something new, something beginning. The dinner spot May chose wasn't fancy, but it had heart. A tucked-away corner cafe just off Cannon Street, with creaky floorboards, candles in mason jars, and the kind of staff that knew your name before you gave it. The walls were lined with black and white photos of Charleston's past. Parades, protests, weddings, all blurred into a timeline of everything the city had been and survived. May arrived first, choosing a booth near the window. She wore a dark green wrap dress, simple but elegant, and her hair was down for the first time since Cole had met her. It softened her, but didn't make her any less sharp. She looked up from the menu just as the front door chimed. Cole walked in, and for a second he didn't look like the man who commanded boardrooms and blueprints. He looked unsure, like he wasn't used to entering places where reservations didn't exist and the specials weren't plated like museum exhibits. He spotted her and made his way over. "This place has character," he said, sliding into the booth across from her. "It has soul," she corrected, smiling. "You'll get used to it." A waitress with a tired smile and a notepad in her apron came over. "Evening, folks. The pecan-crusted catfish is near perfect tonight, and we've got lemon pie still warm from the oven." May nodded. "We'll start with the catfish. Sweet tea for me." Cole hesitated. "Just water." May arched a brow. "You don't drink sweet tea?" "I don't know that I've ever had it." The waitress gasped, hand to chest. "Lord, you poor thing. Don't worry, sugar. We'll fix that tonight." When she walked away, May shook her head, amused. "You've been gone from the South too long." "I never felt like I belonged here to begin with," he said, voice quiet. May tilted her head. "Why?" Cole glanced out the window, watching the streetlight flicker above a parked bike. "I always felt out of sync, like everyone else spoke a language I didn't learn. They cared about rituals, Sunday potlucks, porch lights. I cared about escape plans." May studied him. "And now?" He looked back at her. "Now I'm wondering if I missed something important." Their food arrived, steam rising in soft curls. Cole picked up his fork like it was a foreign tool, then took a bite. He blinked. "That's incredible." May grinned. "Told you." They ate in a silence that wasn't awkward. It was thick with unspoken things, the kind that usually take years to build. But here, they'd arrived fast, uninvited and inevitable. After dinner, they stepped outside into the warm night. The air smelled like rain on brick and magnolia petals curling in the dark. May wrapped her arms loosely around herself. "Walk with me?" Cole nodded. They moved down the sidewalk slowly, shoes tapping rhythmically against the cobblestones. The city wasn't asleep, just dreaming. Windows glowed. Music drifted from open doors. Laughter echoed from somewhere down the street, small and human and good. "You and your sister," May began carefully. "You always that close?" Cole exhaled through his nose. "We used to be. After our parents passed, we got tighter. But it shifted. She thinks I abandoned Charleston." "I think she chained herself to it." "Maybe you're both right," May said. They stopped near a small gated garden. Wisteria hung heavy along the fence. May reached out, ran her fingers over the delicate blooms. "My mom loved these," she said. "She used to say they reminded her that beauty could be unruly and still belong." Cole looked at her. "Do you remember her well?" May's hand dropped. She nodded slowly. "Bits and pieces. She died when I was 7. My dad never remarried. He raised me with his hands always covered in sawdust and his heart wrapped in silence." "I'm sorry." She shrugged, soft. "It made me good at being alone, but not so great at letting people stay." They fell quiet again. Not cold, just suspended. May turned toward him. Why this project, Cole? Really? He met her gaze. Because I'm tired of building places that people take pictures in and then leave. I want to build something that holds people, even if I don't know how to stay there myself. May blinked, caught off guard by the honesty. Then, come with me. What? She took his hand, gently but firmly, and led him down a side alley that opened into a back courtyard behind a historic church. Moonlight filtered through the Spanish moss. In the center stood an old stone bench, cracked but solid. May sat. He followed. This is where I go when I don't know what comes next, she said. When I need to remember that time moves, even when I feel stuck. Cole leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. I haven't sat still in 10 years, he admitted. Not really. Then sit now, May whispered. Just for a minute. And so he did. No words, no plans, no deadlines, just breath and moonlight, and her hand resting near his. He didn't touch it, but he didn't pull away either. Finally, May spoke again, barely above a whisper. I don't believe in accidents, Cole. I believe some places call people home when it's time. He turned to her, voice barely steady. And you think this is mine? She looked at him, full and unblinking. I think it could be. He closed his eyes for a moment, and in that stillness, something inside him shifted. It didn't break. It didn't crumble. It just moved. A sound behind them, the church bell, chiming once, then silence. May stood, brushing off her dress. I should go. He stood too. Can I walk you home? She hesitated, then smiled, small but sure. No, but you can call me tomorrow. He nodded, and watched her walk away into the silver-stained night, her silhouette dissolving into the hum of the sleeping city. Left alone, Cole sat back down on the bench, and for the first time in a long time, he didn't check his phone. He just let himself be still. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought mattered to me either way. The storm rolled in without warning. By 4 in the afternoon, Charleston's humid sky had soured from buttercream to slate, and the wind curled tight around the corners of the old boarding house like it remembered something. Rain hadn't started yet, but the air was heavy with the promise of it, thick, waiting to split open. May stood by the grand front window of the project site, arms crossed, watching the clouds crawl in over the bay. She liked storms. They were honest. You could see them coming, even if you couldn't stop them. Behind her, the building creaked like it had something to say. You're still here. Cole's voice came from the staircase, low and unexpected. May turned slightly. The electricians ran late. I stayed to walk them through the final wiring plan before they closed the walls. He walked into the room, raincoat folded over one arm. I didn't think anyone would still be around with the weather turning. I grew up here, she said, arching a brow. Storms don't scare me. A distant rumble of thunder rolled across the sky like a warning. Cole walked over beside her, gaze following hers to the gathering darkness outside. Then the rain started, not drizzle, not the kind that tapped politely against windows. It came hard and fast, smearing the world into watercolor. May blinked. Well, guess I'm staying put. Cole turned toward her. You didn't drive? Walked from the cafe. It was clear 20 minutes ago. She laughed softly. Charleston. Cole checked his phone. Looks like it's a mess all over town. Roads flooding near the Battery. Trees down east of here. May glanced at her bag. I should call my dad. Let him know I'm fine. Cole stepped out to give her a moment. When he came back, she was setting her phone down, brow furrowed. He didn't answer. He's probably asleep in front of the TV. You're welcome to wait it out here, Cole offered, voice soft. May hesitated, then nodded once. All right. The wind howled outside, pushing rain sideways against the tall windows. Inside, the house felt older than it was, like the storm had peeled time back. Cole looked around the dim room. We haven't touched the parlor yet, have we? May shook her head. Nope. Still waiting on permits for that part. He walked to the fireplace. Dust coated the old brick. The mantel was scratched and chipped, but still proud. He ran a finger along the edge. "My mother used to say, fireplaces held the heat of old conversations," he murmured. May stepped closer, voice quiet. "Maybe that's why we feel things in certain rooms, even after they're empty." They stood there in the quiet, broken only by the wind and rain. Cole reached into his coat and pulled out something small, round, silver, and worn. "My father's pocket watch," he said, turning it in his palm. "It stopped the day he died. I had it repaired twice. It keeps breaking." May reached out, touched it gently with her fingertips. "Maybe it's not supposed to be fixed." He looked at her. She didn't flinch. "I think some things are meant to remind us," she continued, "of when everything changed." Thunder cracked overhead, closer now. The lights flickered, then went out completely. Darkness swallowed the room. May sucked in a breath. "Well," she said, into the black. "That's dramatic." Cole chuckled. "Stay here. I'll find a flashlight." Footsteps. A cabinet creaking open. Then, light. A single flashlight beam illuminated the space, casting long shadows across the floor. Cole set it on the windowsill, angled up just enough to give them a soft glow. May sat on the wide windowsill and pulled her knees up, hugging them lightly. "This place feels different without power," she said. "It feels honest," Cole replied, leaning against the wall opposite her. They sat in the half-light, the storm roaring around them. It felt like the house was breathing with them, exhaling years of silence, dust, and history. "I was engaged once," May said suddenly. Cole looked up. She kept her eyes on the rain. 7 years ago, it ended quietly. No drama, just wrong timing. He wanted things I wasn't ready to give. What did he want? A version of me I hadn't met yet. Silence. Cole shifted, then spoke. "I've never been engaged, never even got close. My relationships tend to be short, safe, convenient." May turned to him. "You build homes for strangers, but don't let anyone build one with you." He didn't answer. "You don't have to explain," she added. "I'm not asking for a map." Cole studied her face, lit faintly by the bouncing beam of the flashlight. The storm had pushed them into stillness, but the air between them was anything but calm. "I'm not used to this," he said. "Storms?" "No," he replied, sitting still, feeling seen. May's voice was soft. "Maybe that's the beginning of something." He stepped forward, not close enough to touch her, but enough that her breath caught. "I don't know how to do this slowly," he admitted. "Then don't," she whispered. "But don't run, either." They stayed there, the moment between them stretching, raw and real. Then the power flickered back on. Light flooded the room. The spell broke. May blinked, then slid down from the sill, smoothing her dress. "Looks like the storm's passing." Cole checked his watch, still stuck at 4:11. She moved to the door, but paused. "I wasn't going to fall for you," she said, without turning around. "But it's getting harder not to." Then she was gone, her footsteps echoing down the hall like the last crack of thunder. Cole stood alone in the room, the air still humming with what hadn't been said, and for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like the one with all the control. He felt like the one being asked to stay. The next morning, the storm had scrubbed the sky clean. Charleston woke up fresh, dew clinging to iron fences and flower boxes, the air holding that rare clarity that only comes after a good rain. At the project site, the scent of wet wood and old brick drifted through the open windows like a song the house remembered. May arrived early, earlier than usual. She moved through the first floor with purpose, clipboard in hand, but her mind wasn't on permits or plumbing. It was still back in that parlor, still circling around the moment before the lights came back on. She hadn't meant to say it. "I wasn't going to fall for you." It had slipped out, unguarded and bare, but it was true. Every time she looked at Cole, something in her shifted, something she hadn't touched in years. and it scared her more than the storm ever could. May. She turned to see Eleanor standing in the foyer, arms crossed, expression unreadable. May blinked. "Hey, I didn't expect—" "I want to talk," Eleanor cut in, already walking toward the back office. May followed, setting her clipboard down as the door clicked shut behind them. Eleanor didn't sit. She leaned against the desk, arms tight. "I know something's happening between you and my brother," she said. "And I need to understand if this is going to derail the project." May's jaw tightened. "With respect, Eleanor, what happens between me and Cole is our business." "I disagree," Eleanor said calmly. "This building is more than a project. It's tied to my family's name. And if you break him, if you leave when things get complicated, it won't just be him who suffers. It'll be all of us." May stood straighter. "I'm not in the business of breaking people." "No," Eleanor said, eyes narrowing, "but you are in the habit of walking away when things don't go to plan." May stiffened. "What do you mean by that?" "I looked into you," Eleanor said without apology. "Your last firm. The engagement, you left it all behind, fast. No explanation, just gone." May's breath caught. "That's not your story to tell." "It's mine to worry about," Eleanor replied. "I've spent years cleaning up after Cole's impulsive choices. I won't do it again." May stepped closer, her voice low but firm. "I didn't come here to fall for him. I came here to build something that mattered. And I'm still here, aren't I?" Eleanor's eyes searched hers, and for a flicker of a second, something softened. "You're different," she said, quieter now. "That's what scares me." They stood in the stillness, the weight of unspoken things thick in the air. Then Eleanor walked to the door and paused. "For his sake, don't make promises you can't keep." She left. May exhaled, pressing her palms to the desk. Her reflection in the window looked steadier than she felt. Later that afternoon, Cole arrived on site wearing his usual cool calm, but his eyes searched the space like he was looking for something he couldn't name. He found May in the garden courtyard, kneeling beside one of the old hydrangea bushes, fingers dusted with soil. "I brought you something," he said. She looked up. "A coffee? Or another emotional curveball?" He held up a small square package wrapped in brown paper. May raised an eyebrow. "You wrapped something?" "I had help," he admitted. She stood, brushing dirt from her hands, and took it, carefully unwrapped it. Inside was an old photograph, sepia-toned, faded but still clear. A group of women gathered on the same porch she now walked every day, smiling, tired, alive. The year written in pencil on the back, 1944. "I found it at a local archive," Cole said. "Thought it might belong here." May traced the edge of the photo with her thumb. "They look like they had secrets." "They probably did," he said. "But they stayed. They built something together." She looked at him. "That's what scares you, isn't it?" He blinked. "What?" "Together. The staying part." Cole exhaled through his nose, gaze drifting to the ivy creeping up the old stone wall. "I'm good at beginnings. Great, even. But I've never known what to do with the middle, or the messy parts." "We're already in the middle, Cole." He turned to her slowly. "And if it gets messy?" "It will," she said. "That's the point." He stepped closer, searching her face. "I don't want to ruin this," he murmured. "You don't have to protect me from you," May said softly. "Just tell the truth when it counts." Silence, deep and real, stretched between them. Then he reached for her hand, tentative but sure. She let him. The sun broke through the clouds then, slanting golden light across the garden. The hydrangeas glowed blue and violet in the warmth, as if remembering what it meant to bloom. May looked up at him. "You know the house isn't the only thing being restored here," she said. "I know," he replied. "And that's the part I didn't plan for. As they stood there, hands laced, shadows long behind them, they didn't hear the footsteps until they were close. Walter, May's father, stepped into view from the side gate, his expression unreadable. May stiffened. "Dad?" Walter's eyes moved from their joined hands to her face. "I figured I'd stop by," he said, voice rough with age and something else. "Didn't mean to interrupt." Cole let go of her hand slowly. May stepped forward. "Dad, this is Cole Whitaker." Walter nodded once. "I've heard." Cole offered a hand. "It's good to meet you, sir." Walter didn't shake it. Not yet. Instead, he looked at May. "You working late again?" "I was just finishing up," she said. Walter glanced around the courtyard, then back at Cole. "Don't waste her time," he said flatly. "She's better than that." Then he turned, leaving the air thick behind him. May closed her eyes. "He's not usually—" "It's okay," Cole said, voice calm. "He's protecting what matters." May looked at him, searching. "Are you sure this doesn't scare you off?" He smiled, just barely. "I didn't walk away in the storm. I won't walk away now." For a long moment, she just stood there, watching him. Then she nodded. "Okay," she whispered. "Let's see where this goes." And somewhere beneath them, behind the old stone, the earth breathed a little deeper. The roots were growing. The scent of fresh paint and newly cut wood clung to the air like something sacred. A week had passed since Walter's quiet warning, and May had done what she always did when emotions tangled. She buried herself in the work. She knew every corner of that old building now. The way the second stair creaked. The patch of soft floor near the back library. The draft that slipped through the cracked window in the sunroom like a whisper. But even with all the movement, her thoughts kept drifting. To Cole, to his hand in hers, to the way he didn't flinch when her father shut him down. He hadn't called the next day, or the day after that. He had shown up to the site, on time, polite, professional, like nothing had happened. But the quiet between them had thickened again, heavy with everything that had gone unsaid since the moment in the garden. Now, May stood in the upstairs suite that would one day be the crown jewel of the inn. Morning light bathed the wide room, touching the high ceiling beams and bare floors like a blessing. She traced her fingers along the windowsill, remembering what it felt like to be seen, and afraid of it. The door creaked behind her. "You're early," she said without turning. "So are you," Cole replied. She glanced back at him, brow raised. "Are we avoiding each other by showing up first?" "Feels like it," he said, stepping in. May folded her arms. "Then let's not." Cole hesitated, then nodded. "All right." He crossed the room slowly, but didn't get too close. "Your father, he was right to question me," he said. "I haven't exactly lived a life built on staying." May didn't look away. "I don't need a perfect track record, Cole. I just need the truth." He exhaled. "The truth is, I felt something the night of the storm, and I panicked. Not because I didn't want it, but because I did." May's throat tightened. "I've spent most of my life building things I could walk away from," he continued. "Buildings, deals, cities. Nothing ever tied me down. Not really." "And now?" she asked softly. He stepped a little closer. "Now I'm starting to want roots. And that scares me." She let that hang in the air. "Do you want this with me?" she asked. He met her eyes. "I do. But I also want to do it right. Slow. Honest." May nodded. Then stopped disappearing. A flicker of something crossed his face. Guilt, maybe. Or relief. "I'll try," he said. "You'll do," May replied. "Trying's just waiting with a safety net." A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Then her phone buzzed. She pulled it out, checked the screen. Her face changed. "What is it?" he asked. She stared at the message. "It's from my old firm. They're offering me a contract. A huge one. Out of Asheville. 3 months. All expenses. full creative control. Cole's expression didn't change, but something in him went still. "When do they need an answer?" he asked. "Today." He nodded slowly. "You should take it," he said. May blinked. "Just like that?" "It's your career," he said carefully. "You earned this." "But?" Cole looked at her, eyes steady. "But it would mean walking away, even temporarily. From this. From us." May turned toward the window, arms crossed tightly. "Why now?" she whispered. "Why does opportunity always come when I'm just starting to feel grounded?" "Because that's when the test shows up," he said quietly. "To see what you're really building." She looked at him, torn. "I don't want to lose this," she said. "You won't," he promised. "If it's real, it doesn't disappear. It just waits." May shook her head. "I don't believe love is patient. I think it's messy, demanding, needy." "It can be," he said. "But sometimes it can also be sure." A silence fell between them, not empty, just full of decisions. "I need time," she said. "I know." She tucked her phone back into her pocket. "I have a meeting. City inspector." He nodded. "I'll be here." She turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Would you wait for me?" she asked, voice almost a whisper. His answer came without hesitation. "I already am." Later that afternoon, May sat in her father's kitchen, staring at the untouched cup of coffee in front of her. Walter moved quietly behind her, pulling cornbread from the oven, humming something low and sad. "You're quiet," he said, setting the pan down. May didn't look up. "Do you think I make decisions too fast?" Walter poured 2 glasses of sweet tea and sat across from her. "I think you move fast when you're scared you'll lose momentum, like if you stop, you'll sink." May swallowed hard. "They offered me a job," she said. 3 months away." Walter sipped his tea. "And the boy?" "He said he'd wait." Walter set his glass down. "And do you believe him?" "I think I want to." Walter nodded slowly. "Then that's something." May looked at him. "You never really approved of him." "I didn't know him," he said. "Still don't. But I saw the way he looked at you, like someone who found something he didn't know he was looking for." May blinked back sudden tears. "You always taught me to be strong," she said. "But sometimes I wish you'd taught me how to stay soft." Walter reached across the table and took her hand, his calloused thumb brushing over her knuckles. "I was afraid of what softness might cost you," he said. "Turns out it might have been what you needed most." She held his gaze for a long time. Then she stood, and for the first time in her life, she wasn't running away from a decision. She was walking straight into it. That evening, May returned to the site. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the garden courtyard. Cole stood near the arbor, a roll of plans in his hand. She approached him, heart pounding. "I turned it down," she said, before he could speak. He looked at her, brows raised. "Why?" "Because I already have a project," she said. "And it's more important than any blueprint." He stepped forward. May met him halfway. And this time, when his hand reached for hers, she didn't hesitate. She held on. May hadn't planned on telling anyone, not yet. The decision was still so fresh it hadn't even settled inside her, like something delicate still unfolding in her chest. But standing there in the courtyard with Cole, his hand warm in hers, she knew she couldn't hold it in. "I'm pregnant." The words came out quieter than she expected, soft like a confession, but heavy like a turning tide. Cole didn't speak at first. His eyes searched hers, not for doubt, but for something real to hold on to. And when he found it, the silence cracked wide open. "You're sure?" he asked, voice hushed. She nodded, biting the inside of her cheek. "I took the test this morning, twice." Cole stepped back slightly, hand still holding hers, like he needed the space to breathe but couldn't let her go. "And you're okay?" May nodded again, slower this time. "I think so. I didn't expect it. I didn't think this was even on the table." He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling hard, gaze darting to the horizon like he could make sense of it all if he stared long enough. Then he looked at her again, softer now. "What do you want to do?" May's throat tightened, not because she didn't have an answer, but because he asked the question right. No panic, no assumptions, just space. "I want to stay," she said. "I want to figure it out. With you." Cole stepped forward, close now, both hands finding hers. "Then that's what we'll do." She blinked, overwhelmed by the simplicity of it. "You're not scared?" she asked. "I'm terrified," he admitted, "but I'd rather be scared with you than certain without you." A wind swept through the courtyard, catching the edge of her coat and lifting her hair. The hydrangeas swayed, and for a second everything felt impossibly still. He kissed her forehead, gently, purposefully. "Let's take this one day at a time," he murmured. She nodded, leaning into him. But the world, as always, had other plans. That afternoon, Eleanor showed up at the project site with a clipboard and tension in every step. May spotted her first. She was standing near the scaffolding, speaking to a city inspector. Her jaw was tight, her stance defensive. May stepped over. "Is everything okay?" Eleanor turned, and the look she gave May was hard to read, somewhere between concern and calculation. "There's a problem with the permit," she said. "What kind of problem?" "The fire codes for the second-floor suite haven't been cleared. If we don't get it resolved this week, we'll lose the inspection window and delay the opening by at least a month," May frowned. "But we submitted those revisions 3 weeks ago." "I know. They're claiming they never received the updated plans." May looked over at the inspector, who was now walking the perimeter of the site. "Can we fix it?" Eleanor lowered her voice. "We can, but we'll need to prioritize this over everything else. That means cutting time from the courtyard, pushing back finishing touches." May swallowed. "So, make the place safe, but less whole." Eleanor met her eyes. "We don't have time to be sentimental, May." May stiffened. "It's not sentiment. It's design. It's the heartbeat of the entire space." "You're letting emotion cloud your judgment," Eleanor snapped. "This isn't just your project. It's Cole's investment. It's our family's legacy." May blinked. "That's what this is about?" Eleanor's face didn't move. May exhaled slowly. "I'm not trying to take anything from you, Eleanor." "You already did," she said quietly. May tilted her head. "What?" "You took his attention," Eleanor said. "His focus. He was never supposed to stay, and now he's here, rooted. Because of you." May's eyes softened. "He stayed because he wanted to." "Not because I asked him to." Eleanor looked away, jaw tight. "I've held this family together for years," she said. "Managed the estates, kept the lights on, and now you walk in, and suddenly he's rearranging his whole life." May didn't respond right away. "Then, you think I'm trying to replace you?" Eleanor said nothing. May stepped closer. "I'm not. I'm just trying to build something real. And I think you are too. Maybe we're not that different." Eleanor looked at her, eyes searching, uncertain. Before she could reply, Cole's voice cut through the air. "What's going on?" He approached, noticing the tension immediately. Eleanor straightened. "Permit issue. Fire codes." He looked between them. "Do we have a plan?" May nodded. "We do, but we'll need to cut some corners to meet the deadline." Cole frowned. "Corners?" "Not safety," she said. "Just polish, detail." He hesitated. May looked at him, steady. "We can do it your way, or we can do it fast. But not both. He looked at Eleanor, then at May. We'll fix the code, he said. But we're not gutting the vision. We'll find a way. Eleanor's expression flickered, but she nodded once. May exhaled. After Eleanor walked off, Cole turned to her. You okay? She nodded. She's scared. So am I, he admitted. They stood in silence, the weight of everything pressing in. Then May touched her stomach, almost without thinking. You think we're ready for all this? She asked. He didn't answer right away. Then, looking at her, at the woman who had challenged him, softened him, rebuilt him without even trying, he spoke. I think ready doesn't matter anymore. She smiled, small and real, and somewhere inside her, the future kicked gently against her ribs. May hadn't slept well in 3 nights. It wasn't the pregnancy, though the waves of nausea and sudden exhaustion were getting harder to hide. And it wasn't the creaks and groans of the old boarding house under renovation. It was everything else, the timelines, the money, the looks on Eleanor's face that hovered somewhere between protectiveness and suspicion, and the way Cole sometimes went quiet at the end of long days, like he was carrying a weight she hadn't been allowed to touch. She sat on the back steps of the house that morning, a cup of ginger tea going cold in her hands, watching the sun push up over the marsh like it was trying to remember how to shine. Cole found her there, hair still damp from his shower, sleeves rolled up, and that quiet focus she'd come to recognize. He didn't say anything at first, just sat beside her and matched her silence. How'd you sleep? He asked eventually. May gave him a tired glance. I didn't. My brain decided 3 a.m. was the perfect time to start sorting tile orders and debating whether we should have kept the original porch beams. Cole chuckled softly. You talk about tile in your sleep. May groaned. You've heard me? He nodded. Something about herringbone patterns and grout colors. Very passionate. She smirked, then looked out at the waking day. Feels like we're holding everything together with thread. It's not thread, he said. It's grit. Sometimes grit snaps too. Cole reached for her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. We've made it this far. She let herself lean into his shoulder, even just for a second. But the moment was short-lived. Eleanor stepped out onto the porch behind them, a file folder tucked under one arm. We need to talk, she said, tone clipped. Cole sat up. Morning, Eleanor. Morning, she replied. Then to May, you've been pushing the courtyard timeline again. May blinked. Only by 2 days. The weather slowed the stone delivery. We can't afford delays, not with the grand opening in 6 weeks. We're still on track, May replied, standing. Barely, but we are. Eleanor handed her the folder. Not if you keep reworking the layout. These changes, adding a water feature, expanding the seating area, this wasn't the plan. May took a breath. The old plan was sterile, functional. This place deserves more. Eleanor's gaze narrowed. You're not designing a dream, you're finishing a business. Cole stepped in. May's right, Eleanor turned sharply. Of course she is. There it was. That edge. Ellie, Cole started. No, she cut him off, voice shaking slightly now. You're letting your feelings get in the way of finishing what we started. You think because you're happy for once, the rules don't apply anymore. May stepped back, as if giving them space. Cole's voice stayed calm. That's not fair. It's true, Eleanor said, eyes glinting. You've changed, Cole, and I don't know if it's good or just reckless. I'm not abandoning the project. But you're not leading it either, she snapped. You're distracted. And this, she waved toward May, isn't sustainable. May felt the sting, but she didn't flinch. Cole stepped forward. She's not a liability, Eleanor. She's the reason I've stayed. Eleanor looked between them, and then her voice broke just a little. And where does that leave me? Silence. May felt something in her chest soften. Eleanor wasn't angry. She was scared. "Eleanor," she said gently, "you've held everything together for so long. We see that. I see it." Eleanor turned, but didn't speak. May continued, voice even. "You built a legacy when no one was watching. I'm not trying to erase that. I'm just trying to be a part of it." Eleanor's eyes glistened for a beat, but she turned away before anything could fall. "I need to go check on the contractor," she muttered, and disappeared through the side path. Cole let out a breath. That could have gone worse. May looked at him. "I don't think she hates me." "She doesn't," he said. "She's just never had to share before." They moved through the day quietly, each of them lost in their own threads of thought. By late afternoon, May was in the nursery room upstairs, what would one day be part of the private residence space they were slowly carving out at the back of the house. She stood in the empty space, tracing the pale lines where sunlight filtered through dusty windows. She imagined rocking chairs, white curtains, the soft hush of lullabies. Then something sharp caught her breath, a pull low in her belly. Not painful, just insistent. She stilled, another tug, a flutter, then nothing. She placed her palm over the spot, not fear, not exactly, but a whisper of reality. Later, when she told Cole, he didn't say anything at first. He just knelt down, gently placed his hands over hers, and pressed his forehead to her stomach. May felt the lump rise in her throat. "You okay?" she whispered. He nodded against her. "Just listening." She closed her eyes, holding that stillness. The world outside the house moved on, workers hammering, trucks backing up, phones ringing, but inside that moment, everything else fell away. "Promise me something," she said softly. "Anything. If this gets harder, if we get tired or lost or scared, don't retreat, don't disappear." His voice came steady. "I won't. Not this time." She nodded, and even though nothing was finished yet, not the house, not the story, not them, May knew something vital had shifted. They weren't building alone anymore. They were building forward, together. Rain had returned to Charleston. Not a storm, not a downpour, just a steady, quiet mist that blanketed the city in hush and reflection. It tapped against the windows of the boarding house, turned in like it had secrets to whisper. May stood in the front hallway, watching it through the tall glass. Her hand rested gently over her stomach, the way it had more and more lately. There was no bump yet, just a promise, a feeling, but it made her see the world differently. Every sound, every silence felt like part of something bigger now. Cole was upstairs in what would be the main guest suite, arguing quietly over the phone with a contractor. The tile shipment had been delayed again. The courtyard stone hadn't cured properly, and the new city inspector was threatening to reschedule the final inspection. Tension had crept in, not in big, loud ways, but in the little moments. A sigh that lingered too long, a sentence cut short, a pause where reassurance used to be. May turned as Eleanor came in from the back porch, shaking off the mist and dusting off her coat. "You look like you haven't slept," Eleanor said, walking past her. "Neither have you," May replied gently. Eleanor gave her a look but didn't deny it. She set her clipboard on the foyer table and looked around the room. "The florist pushed back delivery for the opening," she said. "They're short on white lilacs," said the early heat wave stunted the blooms. May let out a tired laugh. "Of course it did, because why wouldn't flowers be dramatic too?" Eleanor actually smiled at that, a small one, but real. Then, without looking at her, Eleanor said, "I saw the nursery." May's breath caught. "I didn't go in," Eleanor added quickly. "Just saw the light through the door." May turned toward her, cautious. "I didn't plan it this soon," May said. "We weren't even sure we'd stay." "And now you're planting roots," Eleanor said quietly. May nodded. "I don't know how to do this," Eleanor said suddenly. "Be supportive, or whatever this is supposed to be." May's voice softened. Maybe it's just about showing up. Not knowing how, but doing it anyway. Eleanor met her eyes. You really love him? May didn't hesitate. Yes, even when he makes it hard. Eleanor nodded slowly. He does that. Gets in his own way. Has since we were kids. A long beat passed. Then Eleanor said, He's afraid he won't be enough. Not for you. Not for the baby. May's throat tightened. He's already enough, but I can't be the only one saying it. Eleanor looked away, something flickering behind her eyes. You're not. Cole came downstairs just then, looking weary but collected. He paused when he saw them, May and Eleanor, side by side, not arguing, just existing. We lost 2 more days on the tile, he said, and the inspector moved the walk-through. May gave a small nod. We'll adjust. I also got an email from the investor board, he added. They want me in New York next week. Something about expanding the brand, taking the Ellington concept national. May's stomach dropped. You didn't tell me they were still pushing that, she said. I didn't think it would come to anything, he replied. But now they're serious. They want to open 10 more properties, fast. Eleanor stepped forward. That would mean pulling you off this one. Cole's silence was the answer. May crossed her arms, her voice cool now. And what do you want? Cole hesitated. It's everything I thought I wanted. That's not the same as what you want now. He looked at her. I don't know. May nodded once. Then maybe you should figure it out before we lay any more foundation. She walked past him, upstairs to the nursery room, heart racing. Cole didn't follow. Eleanor stood quietly in the foyer with him, arms crossed. She's right, you know, Eleanor said. You've been split down the middle since day one. I'm trying, Cole said, jaw tight. Try harder, Eleanor replied. For once in your life, pick something that doesn't come with a contract. Later that night, May sat alone in the nursery room, curled up in the window seat. The rain had thickened into a slow drizzle. The shadows moved across the walls like ghosts. She whispered to the little life inside her. Your dad's got a good heart, she said, but sometimes it's buried under too many plans. There was no answer, of course, just the stillness of a room waiting to become something more. She didn't hear the door open, didn't see Cole until he sat beside her, close but careful. I turned them down, he said. May looked over, eyes searching. You did? He nodded. Told them I wasn't leaving Charleston, that this place wasn't just a project anymore. May didn't speak. She was afraid to hope out loud. I want to finish this house, Cole said. I want to build the kind of life I never thought I deserved, with you, with our child. And I don't want to look back and realize I built an empire but lost my home. A tear slipped down May's cheek before she could stop it. Cole reached for her hand. She gave it. Outside, the rain slowed. Inside, something rooted a little deeper. The Charleston morning was gold-washed and breezy, the kind of late spring day that made the air feel like hope. May stood on the second-floor balcony of the inn, one hand on her belly, the other shading her eyes as she watched the courtyard below come to life. Landscapers moved in soft rhythm, laying new stone paths and arranging planters of lavender and white sage. The gentle clink of tools and low murmur of voices wrapped around her like a lullaby. Cole had kept his word. Since that night, since he said no to New York, something in him had shifted. He was more present, more grounded. He no longer checked his phone every 5 minutes. He left his emails unread. He showed up early, stayed late, walked the halls like they mattered, and he smiled now. Not often, but when he did, it reached all the way to his eyes. May didn't realize she was smiling too until Eleanor stepped beside her, 2 coffee mugs in hand. I figured you'd be up here, Eleanor said, handing her one. May took the cup with a soft thank you. Did you finish the final design for the guest suite? Almost. Had to tweak the lighting plan. Turns out the new sconces are back-ordered. May sipped. They always are. For a moment they just stood in silence, side by side, not enemies, not quite friends, something new, something careful. "He's changed," Eleanor said suddenly. May looked over. "You mean Cole?" Eleanor nodded. "He's lighter, still stubborn, still bossy, but different." May smiled behind her cup. "He let go of something. Power? Control." Eleanor looked at her. "Because of you." May turned back to the view. "No, because of what he chose to build." Eleanor didn't speak right away. Then she said, "You're not who I expected." "Likewise," May said softly. A gust of wind blew through, tossing May's curls across her face. She tucked them behind her ear and closed her eyes for a moment. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced down and her breath caught. "What is it?" Eleanor asked. May swallowed. "Doctor's office." "Everything okay?" May hesitated. "They want me to come in. Something from the last ultrasound flagged. Nothing urgent, they said, but they want to check a few things." Eleanor's voice sharpened. "Do you want me to drive you?" May shook her head. "Cole's downstairs. I'll tell him." Eleanor touched her arm. "Let me know what they say, please." May nodded, but her stomach had already started to twist, not just with nerves, but with that old familiar fear that joy always came with a shadow. She found Cole in the sunroom, reviewing fabric samples with the interior team. He looked up the moment she stepped in, instantly reading her face. "Everything all right?" he asked. May tried to smile, but it faltered. "The doctor wants to see us." "When?" "Now." He didn't hesitate. He stood, handed the samples to a designer, and followed her out. The drive to the clinic was quiet, not tense, just full of weight. Cole reached for her hand across the console and didn't let go. Inside the clinic, the walls were soft gray and the air smelled like clean cotton and lemon. The nurse was kind, the doctor even kinder. May lay back on the exam table, gown open, heart pounding. Cole sat beside her, eyes locked on the monitor. The technician applied the cool gel and pressed the wand to her belly. And then, there they were. 2 tiny shapes, 2 fluttering heartbeats. May's breath hitched. Cole squeezed her hand. "Still twins," the technician said with a smile. The doctor leaned in. "They look good, strong, but we want to keep an eye on a few markers. One of them is measuring slightly behind." May's heart tightened. "What does that mean?" "Could be nothing," the doctor said, "but it means more rest, less stress, and we'll monitor closely from here on out." Cole's voice was steady. "What's the risk?" "Worst case, early delivery," she replied. "But we're not there yet." May nodded slowly, tears threatening. Back in the car, she sat quiet, one hand over her stomach, the other resting on her lap. Cole started the engine, then paused. "We're going to take care of them," he said softly. "Both of them. And you." May looked over at him, and in that moment, all her walls cracked. "I'm scared," she whispered. "Me too," he admitted. She reached for his hand again. That night, back at the inn, Cole called a meeting. He stood at the center of the dining hall, surrounded by staff, contractors, designers, and family. "I know this has been a sprint," he said, "but we're switching gears, slowing things down. No more 12-hour days. No more cutting corners to meet a date that doesn't matter more than the people behind it." Whispers moved through the room. "May and I are expecting," he continued, "and we just learned we're going to have to be careful, so we're going to do that. Together." May stood at the back of the room, watching him. This man who once only chased skylines, now speaking like someone who'd finally come home. Eleanor stepped beside her. "He really meant it," she murmured. May smiled through the ache in her chest. He did. And even though the sky outside was storm gray and heavy with the promise of rain, inside that room, everything felt warm, solid, not perfect, but finally real. The rain had returned, this time heavier. thick drops pounding the roof of the inn like a heartbeat just slightly too fast. The storm rolled in around midnight, when most of the house was asleep. But May wasn't. She stood at the window of the nursery room, one hand resting gently on her belly, watching the flashes of lightning dance beyond the trees. The twins were quiet tonight. Still, maybe too still. May pressed her palm flat against her stomach, waiting. Nothing. A flicker of panic rose in her throat. She pressed again, held her breath. Still nothing. She turned from the window and moved through the hall barefoot, her robe clinging to her. Her feet led her down the stairs without thinking toward the kitchen, where the familiar hum of the fridge and the clink of the rain gutters gave her something to focus on. Cole found her there 5 minutes later. "You okay?" he asked softly, stepping into the glow of the overhead light. May didn't turn. "I don't feel them." He was at her side in seconds. "What do you mean?" "They're always active at night," she said, her voice shaking. "Especially this one." She touched the left side of her belly. "But tonight, I don't know." Cole placed both hands on her stomach, his brows furrowed. "I'm sure it's just a quiet spell," he said, but May heard the tension in his voice. "I need to go in." "Okay. I mean now." Cole didn't argue. He just turned, grabbed his keys from the hook by the back door, and helped her into her coat. The drive was quiet, except for the storm and the sound of May's breathing, shallow, fast. Cole kept glancing at her, knuckles white on the steering wheel. Charleston General was a blur of wet pavement and bright lights. They were ushered through triage quickly, thanks to May's high-risk status, and within minutes she was in a gown, lying back under the soft glow of the monitor screens. A nurse worked quietly, gently applying the gel, placing the Doppler against her stomach. May's eyes were locked on the ceiling. Cole sat beside her, gripping her hand like it was the only solid thing in the room. The first heartbeat came fast and strong. May let out a sob she didn't know she was holding. And then the second one, slightly slower but steady. The nurse smiled. "Both babies are okay. One of them just curled up deep and decided to take a nap. It happens." May covered her face with her hands, tears breaking free. Cole leaned in, forehead pressed to her temple. "They're okay," he whispered. "They're okay." The nurse dimmed the lights and gave them space. May turned to Cole, eyes still full. "I didn't realize how scared I was, until I thought I'd already lost them." He kissed her forehead. "We're not going to lose them." "But what if something happens later? What if this is just the start?" "Then we take it 1 minute at a time," he said. "You, me, and them." The doctor came in shortly after, ran some additional tests, and confirmed there were no signs of preterm labor or distress. Just a quiet spell. Nothing dangerous, for now. But then she said, "We'll need to consider modified bed rest soon. Maybe sooner than planned. Your body's telling you to slow down. I suggest you listen." May nodded slowly. Back at the inn, hours later, the storm had passed. Dawn was beginning to creep over the marshlands in soft streaks of silver and coral. Cole helped May into bed and sat beside her, brushing damp strands of hair from her forehead. "I think I need to step back," she whispered. "From the design, from the opening, from all of it." He nodded. "I'll handle it." She looked at him. "Are you sure?" "I have Eleanor. I have Walter. And I have the version of me that doesn't run from the hard stuff anymore." May closed her eyes. "I'm afraid if I stop moving, I'll fall apart. Then I'll catch you." She didn't reply, just reached for his hand, their fingers lacing together, and let herself drift into the first peaceful sleep she'd had in days. And outside, the light kept rising. May's world had narrowed to a rhythm of stillness. Gone were the daily sight walks, the spontaneous design tweaks, the mid-morning meetings in the dusty parlor with fabric samples strewn across the table. Now it was long, quiet days in the sunroom, feet elevated, her laptop closed more often than not, and warm tea cooling beside unread books. The quiet didn't come easy. At first it felt like losing something, her grip on the project, her place in the movement of things. But then something unexpected surfaced, a kind of surrender, a slow uncoiling. Cole had stepped up, just like he said he would. Each morning, he brought her a detailed update. Each evening, he came home covered in sawdust or paint or ink from revised blueprints and laid beside her like the weight of the day had been worth it. But this morning, he was quiet. May noticed it the moment he kissed her forehead. Too soft, too quick. She watched him move through the room, organizing files, answering texts, distracted. "Something's off," she said finally. Cole paused. "It's nothing big." "That's what people say before they tell you something big." He sighed and sat beside her. "We had a delivery mix-up. Wrong fixtures arrived for the bridal suite bathrooms, and now they're saying the replacements won't come for another 2 weeks." May winced. "Can we sub in something similar?" "I already checked. The alternates don't match the antique finishes we built the whole aesthetic around." May frowned. "So we delay?" "I don't want to. We're already cutting it close." "But we can't rush and ruin it," she said softly. He nodded, but something in his face stayed tense. "Cole," she said, reaching for his hand, "this isn't about the fixtures." He hesitated, then finally met her eyes. "I ran into Marcus at the bank this morning. He said the investor board's been circling again, even after I said no." May's chest tightened. "They won't let it go? They think I'm wasting the Ellington name on a boutique property. They're calling it sentimental branding." May let out a breath, sharp. "And what do you think it is?" "I think they don't get it. And you?" "I do." His words were firm, but his eyes told the truth. He was rattled. May touched his cheek. "You built this place to mean something. Not just to be another property stamped with your name." "I know." "Then don't let them shrink it down to numbers." A silence settled between them. Outside, the trees rustled in the breeze, their shadows flickering across the floor in soft waves. "I've spent most of my life building up walls," he said suddenly. "Not literal ones, emotional ones. I thought if I controlled everything, I wouldn't lose anything." May stayed quiet. "But you came in like a hurricane," he went on, voice low. "You flipped the plans, rewrote the script, made it all messier and more real. And now I can't imagine doing any of this without you." May swallowed hard. "Then don't." He leaned forward, resting his forehead against hers. "Stay in this with me, even from the couch." "I'm not going anywhere." That evening, Eleanor brought over a basket of warm biscuits and lemon honey from the bakery down the road. She hovered awkwardly near the door before stepping in. "I thought May might be craving something sweet," she said, avoiding Cole's gaze. May smiled. "Perfect timing." Eleanor placed the basket on the table, then looked at Cole. "I know the investors are circling again," she said bluntly. "Marcus called me too." Cole blinked. "He what?" "I told him if he wanted the Ellington name so badly, he could buy a dictionary." May laughed, startled. Eleanor shrugged. "I may have also reminded him that I own 1/3 of the trademark rights, and that if they try to pressure you again, I'll file an injunction so fast it'll make their polished shoes spin." Cole stared at her. "You'd do that?" he asked. Eleanor's voice softened. "This place is the first time I've seen you happy in ever. I'm not letting them bulldoze that just because they think bigger is always better." He looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time. "Thank you," he said, simply. Eleanor nodded, then turned to May. "Eat something before it gets cold." May reached for a biscuit and bit into it, warmth spreading through her chest. In that quiet, golden moment, the three of them sat in the glow of the setting sun, the builder, the protector, and the woman who turned blueprints into something worth staying for. And though the house wasn't finished yet, May knew one thing for certain. The foundation was stronger than ever. May hadn't slept much. It wasn't discomfort or even the heat, though Charleston's humidity pressed against the windows like breath on glass. It was the feeling, that quiet pulse of something just beyond the horizon. She lay on the couch in the sunroom, curled beneath a thin throw, watching shadows shift along the floor. Her hand moved in slow circles across her belly, whispering to the twins with her touch. Cole had fallen asleep beside her earlier, sitting up with his laptop open but forgotten, one arm still loosely cradled around her legs. Now he stirred awake, blinking before checking the clock. "It's 3 in the morning," he mumbled. "What are you doing awake?" May looked over at him. "Couldn't settle. They've been moving all night." He sat up straighter, rubbing his eyes. "Good movement?" "Big, like they're trying to rearrange the furniture in there." He chuckled softly, then leaned in to rest his ear gently against her stomach. A pause. Then his smile returned. "Active little architects," he murmured. May brushed his hair back. "I think they're just eager to meet you." He pulled back slowly, studying her. "You think they're ready?" She nodded, hesitating. "I think I might be." Cole didn't speak. The weight of that moment lingered in the space between them. Then, "Let's finish it." May blinked. "Finish what?" "The nursery. Today. Whatever's left." May's eyes softened. "You don't have to." "I want to," he said. "We've done all this work on every room in this house, but the most important one." She looked at him for a long beat, then smiled. "Okay." By sunrise, the whole house was moving. Eleanor arrived with a box of soft pastel linens and a carton of peach muffins. Walter brought a custom-made rocking chair May had forgotten she even requested. Vivian, one of their oldest contractors, showed up with a toolbox and a hug. "Thought I'd stop by and tighten a few loose screws," she said, "just in case those babies are anything like their mama." May laughed through her tears. The energy shifted. The nursery, once a half-finished room with open paint cans and taped blueprints, became something else. Real, alive. They painted over the last bare wall, cloud gray. Hung a mobile made of soft felt stars and cotton moons. Positioned the cribs just so, angled toward the window that caught the morning light. A reading nook came together in the corner, piled high with stuffed animals and weathered storybooks from May's childhood. And when it was all done, May stepped back and covered her mouth with both hands. Cole watched her closely. "You okay?" She nodded. "It's perfect." "You sure?" She walked to him slowly and leaned into his chest. "I've never been more sure of anything." He held her there, and for the first time, he realized she was trembling. "May?" She pulled back just enough to look at him. Her voice was quiet. "Something's happening." His blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" She closed her eyes for a second. Then, calm but firm, said, "I think my water just broke." Everything slowed. Then it sped up. Cole turned toward Eleanor, who just stepped into the room. "Call the hospital." Eleanor's face went pale, but she nodded and disappeared down the hall. Walter rushed in from the hallway. "What's going on?" "Babies," May breathed. "Today." Vivian stepped forward. "You need help getting to the car?" Cole was already beside May, arm wrapped gently around her back. "I've got her." May laughed once, sharp and short, more from adrenaline than humor. Well, this escalated quickly. Cole met her eyes, his voice suddenly soft again. "You're not scared?" She nodded. "Terrified, but also ready. You're the strongest person I know. Remind me of that in a few hours." He kissed her forehead. Every hour, every minute. Outside, the clouds had parted. The storm from days ago had cleared completely, and golden light poured through the live oaks. May let out a shaky breath as they made their way to the front door. Behind them, The nursery stood waiting. 2 cribs bathed in morning light, a rocking chair beside the window, and the promise of a new chapter finally arriving. The drive to Charleston General was a blur of flashing lights, shallow breaths, and whispered reassurances. May sat in the passenger seat, one hand gripping the door handle, the other clutched tight in Cole's. Each contraction hit harder than the last, but she kept her eyes locked on the horizon, fighting the waves of panic with deep, steady breaths. Cole kept glancing between the road and her face, fingers white-knuckled on the wheel. "Almost there," he said for the 3rd time. "You're doing amazing." May exhaled through clenched teeth. "You said that 10 minutes ago. This time I mean it." When they pulled up to the emergency entrance, Eleanor was already waiting. She'd taken a separate car and somehow still arrived first. The doors flew open and nurses moved with practiced calm, sliding May into a wheelchair, checking her vitals, asking questions she could barely focus on. Cole stayed by her side, never letting go. Everything after that moved too fast and too slow at once. May was wheeled into a private delivery room, bright, sterile, humming with quiet urgency. Nurses moved with efficiency, their voices low but focused. The doctor arrived, reviewed her chart, and began monitoring the twins. Cole stood beside the bed, brushing her hair back between contractions, whispering to her when her eyes clenched shut. Then came the words that changed everything. "One of the babies is in distress," the doctor said. May's eyes snapped open. "What does that mean?" The doctor's tone remained calm, but her face tightened. "Baby B's heart rate is dropping during contractions. We're prepping the OR for a possible C-section. We want to keep both babies safe." May's breath hitched. She looked at Cole, whose jaw had gone tight. "Do what you need to," May said, voice shaking. The nurse adjusted the monitors. "You're not in active labor yet, but it's progressing quickly. We need to make a decision soon." May turned her face to Cole. "I'm scared." He leaned down, his forehead resting gently against hers. "I know. But I'm right here. What if something happens? Then we face it together." She closed her eyes. The room buzzed around them, equipment beeping, nurses coordinating, the rustle of scrubs and gloves and soft-soled shoes. But in that moment, it was just the 2 of them, hands clasped, breath synced, time folded. Then a nurse returned with news. "OR is ready." The decision had to be made. May nodded. "Let's do it." Everything accelerated. Paperwork. Prep. Cole changed into surgical scrubs. May was wheeled through the hall under soft, too bright lights, her hand reaching for his the entire way. The operating room was cold, fluorescent lights overhead. Nurses moved in a practiced ballet. The anesthesiologist explained the spinal block. Cole sat at May's head, masked and covered, his hand in hers, eyes locked on hers like a lifeline. "You're doing good," he whispered. "I can't feel anything." "That's the point." She gave a weak smile, then winced as the tugging began behind the curtain. Minutes felt like hours. Then came the cry. A single, sharp wail. May burst into tears. "That's baby A," the nurse said, holding up a tiny red-faced boy, squirming and loud. "Healthy," the doctor confirmed. "Vitals are strong." May could barely breathe. Her heart had cracked wide open. Then came silence. Too much silence. May turned to Cole, panic blooming. "Where's the other one?" The room had gone quieter. Focused, and then, finally, a softer, weaker cry. "Baby B is here," the doctor said. "We're taking her to NICU for monitoring. A little underweight, but she's breathing on her own." May let out a sob, half laughter, half prayer. "They're okay?" she whispered. "They're here," Cole said, voice thick. "And they're fighters. Just like their mama." The rest was a blur of stitching and cleaning, of being wheeled back into recovery, of nurses and monitors and IVs. Cole never left her side. Hours later, May was resting in the dim light of the postpartum suite, drifting in and out, when the nurse came in. "You can see your son now," she whispered. May sat up slowly, every muscle aching. Cole helped her into the wheelchair. They rolled down the quiet hallways until they reached the nursery, where a nurse handed her the tiniest bundle she'd ever seen. Warm, breathing, real. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Cole stood behind her, hands on her shoulders, and whispered, "You did it." She looked up at him. "We did it." And just like that, everything changed. They were no longer just builders or lovers or second-chance believers. They were a family, still waiting on one more heartbeat, but already whole. The morning May brought home their daughter, the house smelled like fresh paint, rain-drenched gardenias, and something warm baking in the oven. Cole stood at the door of the Ellington house, holding their tiny baby girl in one arm, the other wrapped gently around May's back as she stepped out of the car. A nurse had followed them home for the first few days, a precaution because of the NICU stay, but May insisted on walking up the porch steps herself. "I want to feel the wood under my feet," she whispered. "This is the house we built. I want her first breath here to mean something." Inside, the light filtered through the gauzy curtains they'd picked out months ago. The nursery glowed, quiet and soft, everything in place. Their son was already napping in his crib, his chest rising and falling with that gentle rhythm that made May's heart ache in gratitude. And now, she was home. She leaned her head on Cole's shoulder as he stood in the center of the room, just holding their daughter, his palm covering most of her tiny back. "She's so small," he whispered. "She's strong," May replied. "She's ours." He looked at her, eyes glassy, voice hoarse. "I didn't know I could love this deeply." May reached up and touched his face. "You just needed someone to hand you the key." Cole turned, stepping into the nursery and placing their daughter into her crib beside her brother. He stood there for a long moment, both hands gripping the railing like if he let go, the whole world might spin too fast. May watched him quietly. Then, almost without thinking, he said, "I cancelled the Asia project." She blinked. "What?" "The board sent over another offer, bigger than the first. They want to build a luxury hotel in Singapore, put my name on the side again." "And you said no?" He nodded, jaw tense. "Why?" He turned to her slowly. "Because if I left now, if I chased more, just to prove something, I'd be walking away from the only thing that's ever felt like enough." May stepped closer, her hand resting on his chest. "You chose here. I chose us." That night, the inn was filled with the quiet hum of family. Eleanor brought over soup and insisted on holding both babies while May took a shower. Walter stood in the hallway near the nursery, pretending to check the windowsills but really just watching the twins sleep. Vivian sent a basket of hand-knit baby blankets and a note that read, "Keep building the soft stuff, too." Later, long after the house had gone quiet, Cole sat on the front porch with May curled beside him, wrapped in a blanket, the sound of cicadas rising from the marsh. He reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, a letter. He handed it to her. "I wrote something a while back. Didn't know when I'd give it to you." She unfolded it, eyes skimming across his neat handwriting. Then her breath caught. It read, "May, before you, my world was perfectly controlled, silent, efficient, empty. I've built towers and watched them scrape the sky. I've filled ledgers and passed board votes and walked into ballrooms with champagne in my hand and never once felt what I feel when I watch you in the morning light, barefoot, your hair a mess, smiling down at the life we made. You built something in me no blueprint ever could. If you'll have me, forever, not just until the paint dries, I'd like to spend the rest of my days choosing you, again and again. Love, Cole." May stared at the page, then looked up, eyes brimming. "You mean this?" He pulled something from his pocket. Not a diamond, not some over-polished showpiece. It was a simple gold band, delicate and warm. "I was never waiting for the right moment," he said softly. "I was waiting to become the kind of man who could deserve you." She blinked fast, heart pounding. "So, is that a proposal?" He smiled. "It's a question." May reached for the ring with trembling fingers. "Then yes. Absolutely, yes." He slipped it on her finger, then kissed her hand, slow and reverent. They sat in silence, wrapped in the moment, while the moon climbed higher and the trees swayed in the hush of the night. Behind them, the inn, the house that had started as a project and become a love story, stood strong and warm, filled with light, with life, with tiny breaths and steady heartbeats. May leaned her head against Cole's shoulder and whispered, "You know what the funny thing is?" "What?" "You always thought you were building a hotel." He turned to her, brow lifted. "But what you really built," she looked up at him, eyes shining, "was home." And in that quiet southern night, with love asleep just beyond the nursery door and forever stitched into the walls around them, Cole Ellington finally understood. Legacy wasn't what you left behind. It was who you chose to hold on to.